the volume up.
We're okay.
Good.
Yeah. So, I have your number just in case you have a question. Because I haven't tested. I have somebody testing the upstairs.
Yeah, I'm going upstairs right now.
Okay.
When I'm done, before I leave, I let you know.
Okay, I'll be right here. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Thank you, Kumar. Appreciate it. Okay. So good morning again, my brothers and sisters. Um, if I can have everyone's attention, I'm pretty sure some of you are familiar with the extraordinary form of the Mass. It is the old traditional Mass that we've had for many, many years until 1970 when the new Mass was given to us by the Holy Catholic Church. But for those who are not familiar with the Mass or have forgotten about the Mass, I would like to say a few pointers for the Mass. The Mass today will be in the venerable language in Latin. It is the universal language of the Church. It is the language that has been for so many years the only language that we had the Mass until 1970. The reason why the Legion of Mary decided to hold the extraordinary form of the Mass are for two reasons. Number one, we want to make sure that in our ministry we are aware of the beauty of our old Mass. And I'm pretty sure many of you regularly go to the new Mass or the English Mass or the vernacular Mass or the Spanish Mass 52 times a year. But many of your parishes have not yet ready to celebrate this Mass. So it is an opportunity for all of us to really learn, experience it, the beauty of the old Mass. Latin also unifies all of us. As I can see, I can hear many different languages. We have today the Koreans, the Spanish, the Filipinos, the Ilocanos, English, but Latin unifies all of us as one church. That's why Latin is the language that the church has chosen to unify all of us. The epistle and the gospel of the Mass will be, and I say maybe because it's always an option, will be read today in Latin, in English, and in Spanish. The priest celebrates the Mass ad orientem, so he's going to have his back away from you. And the symbol for the ad orientem Mass is that Jesus Christ is coming from the east. So he faces what we call the liturgical east. I don't know if this is east, but it's called the liturgical east. So he's expecting Christ again one day back to us. The Our Father, I know many of you love to say the Our Father, but just to remind everybody that it's only said by the priest, the Pater Noster. Only priests are allowed to give Holy Communion in the Mass. Communion is offered under only one kind. Holy Communion will be given only on the tongue, kneeling. That's why we have kneelers in the front. And priests will be the one to say Amen. I know we're so used to saying Amen after receiving communion, but in the old tradition, the priest completes his formula and ends it with Amen. There's a last gospel at the end of the Mass. The Gospel of St. John. Certain prayers are repeated 3 times in honor of the Trinity. The bow of the head will be seen particularly from the altar server when they hear the word Jesus or Jesus. We bow our head in his honor. And we do another bow, the bow from the waist down when the Trinity is invoked. So just to remind, Holy Communion will be given only on the tongue, so please do not extend your hands. And if you can kneel, please kneel. If you can't, please stand, and it will be given on the tongue. We have, I believe, 6 priests with us today, so we're very fortunate to have them wake up early. And the formula that we will use for the Mass, if you're not familiar with that, is Corpus Domini Nostri Jesu Christi custodiat animam tuam in vitam aeternam. Amen. May the body of our Lord Jesus Christ preserve your soul to everlasting life. Amen. The celebrant for today's Mass is the Legion of Mary, Spiritual Director, Father Lawrence Goody. And as soon as I see them coming to process downstairs, we'll stand up. And there will be kneeling postures at the Mass, but as you can see, we don't have kneelers here. So when I say kneel, you can sit. Or if you still want to kneel, then I will have to congratulate you for being very slim. All right, we have the choir led by Georgiana Askoff, and we have Mr. Lynn Kraling here, with the organist. They've been practicing for the last 5 weeks. I hope, as always, I'm pretty sure you will enjoy and appreciate the beauty of the old Gregorian hymns. The Mass will be in honor of the Blessed Virgin Mary today. It's first Saturday. Finally, there are 2 stations for confession. In order for us to fulfill her first Saturday request, we have 2 priests who will be hearing confession, Father John Ahong and Father Victor Trinidad. By the exit door to my left is the confessional, and in the control booth is another confessional. So in the old tradition of the Latin Mass, confessions are being heard during Mass. So if you want to avail of this, please come up there. We have ushers. Also, we'll stop confession after the sermon, because the priest will come down here for the offertory. So we'll just have to wait until they're ready. And after Mass, please stay for more announcements, and then we will begin the conference. I know you are hungry. I am. We have breakfast at 10 o'clock, and of course, it's not free. We have breakfast offered by our catering company after Mass. So I'm going to let Brother Bob give you the signal, and then we'll begin the celebration of the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass. we have a lot of seats in the front, so you can still come in. I see still some people trickling in. I'm sure there will be a lot more people coming during the Mass, so can everybody see the projectors from the top? Okay, good. Please stand.
Francis Deo. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Dominus vobiscum.
Et cum spiritu tuo.
Oremus. Omnipotens Deus qui in corde beate Mariae Virtutis Signum Spiritus sancti habitaculum preparasti, concede propitio, ore justem immaculati cordis est commemorationem, devotamente recolente secundum cor tuum, vivere valeamus, per Dominum nostrum Iesum Christum Filium tuum, we take it, vivere regnatur unitate, justum Filii Spiritus Sancti, per omnia saecula saeculorum. Amen. Lectio Libri Sapientiae. Ego quasi vitis fructicavi, suavitatem odore, e flores meis fructus flodoris eronasitati, ego mater plus benedictiones, tumores, religione et sancti spei, in me gratia omnes viae veritatis, in me omnes pervitiae virtutis, transite ad me omnes qui concupiscitis me, et ad generationibus meis implemeni, spiritus enim meus super me dulcis, hereditas mea super me et favum, memoria mea in generationes seculorum, qui erunt me arunt exuriet, et qui vivunt me arunt sitiet, qui audet me non confundetur, qui operantur in me non peccabur, qui alucidant me vitam aeternam habebur.
Exultavit olearum in
Dominus vobiscum. Sequentia Sancti Evangelii secundum Ioannem. In illo tempore stava nuxta crucem Iesu mater eius, et sora matrus eius Maria Cleophas, et Maria Magdalene, cum vidis et ergo Iesum matrem, et discipulum santem qui quem diligebat, dicit matri suae mulier, ecce filius tuus, dende dicit discipulo, ecce mater tua, et exila ora cepit, eam discipulis in sua.
Thank you for coming. And I suspect some came from a long distance and got up very early to be here. Made a big sacrifice. Thank you. And I know there's some people that come from my parish that don't know a word of English, speak Spanish. And I gave Ray copies of my talk in Spanish. So if you want to know what I said in English, you can look at the paper in Spanish. Ray, where are you? Okay. You get them out? Okay. And there may not be enough for all the people who speak Spanish, but if you take one for your presidium or your curia and make copies, you're welcome to do that. So, for those who are not aware of this, we're in Monsignor Sweeney territory. This is where he was when I first met him. I was here for 7 years, Our Lady of Peace in Santa Clara, 1971 to 1978. At that time, when I arrived, there was no overpass or parkway. There was no Marriott or Great America or Mission College. There was no Levi Stadium, only orchards, as far as your eye could see. I remember, I think it was the last week or so that I was here, I used to drive out. This was called Coffin Road. Not a very exciting name, right? Coffin Road. And I was driving out on my way to St. Mass in Alviso, and a pheasant flew right over the top of my car. It was like God reminding me what was here first. And when they began to build the overpass, we all knew that it was not for Marriott or the college, or for Levi, but it's for Mary. It's here where I saw the Legion in action for the first time. Sweeney used to go to the meetings, so I used to stay behind, and so I didn't get to any of the periods or the comitiums or any of those things. But I saw it in action. It's here where we studied true devotion together. After the final mass, we go into the cry room. There wasn't much crying going on in the cry room, so we used it for after the mass. We all gathered in there, mostly Legion of Mary people gathered in there, and we went through the true devotion of St. Louis Marie de Montfort, part by part by part. Wonderful opportunity, wonderful thing to do. Great way to read, especially when you see how hard it was for Frank Duff the first time he met True Devotion and St. Louis Marie de Montfort. I became a good friend of Monsignor Sweeney, and I was with him on the day that he died, with Father John Doreen. We were there, said Mass, prayed with him, and then it was getting late, so I said to Father John, I think we better leave, because it's a windy road. Leaving here, we better get out of here before it's too dark. And so while we were driving, we were praying the rosary, and the sun was way over here. We could see it through the clouds, and all of a sudden, the sun was right over us. And it came out. It was covered over. You couldn't hardly see it, but all of a sudden, the clouds lifted, and the sun was right there in front of us. And I said to Father John, I think God is trying to tell us something. And that probably was around the time when Monsignor died. The day that they dedicated the statue of Our Lady, after the ceremony, he went up to where the statue was, and by himself. There wasn't the people that always finished the ceremony. They were down below, and he went up, and I went up with him, and I could see there was sorrow in his face on a day when it should have been sheer joy. And I could kind of read what was going on in his mind. His plan was to have a 90-foot statue, and the statue was 30 feet. Andu, what are you doing to me? The statue was, what he had in his mind, what he planned was a 90-foot statue, and what he got was a 30-foot statue. I sensed his disappointment. I told him, I suspect Our Lady was good at bargaining in the marketplace. If you had started with the 30-foot statue, imagine how small the statue would have been. But because you started at a 90-foot statue, you got a 30-foot one. Not too bad. Not too bad. I suspect now they could put a platform and raise it up a little bit so you could see it from the highway, all the buildings down. I had the opportunity, went to Wilmington, Delaware, where the statue was made, and met the artist, Mr. Parks. And he had to make the statue in 2 parts, and he had to actually take the floor out of the shop where he worked because it was so big, it didn't fit in there. So he had to, for the first part, he had to make the second part, and he said he wasn't sure whether it would match, that the 2 parts would come together as he wanted it. The man who did the little metal pieces, he was the solderer, he did all the metal. He had no doubt it was going to work. But it was done in 3 stages. You can go over and see the 30-foot statues out in the patio, and then the 30-foot statue, which is up above, and then there was going to be the 90th statue. That was the way it was planned. It would be 10, 30, 90. What happened in Dublin in Ireland, September 7th, 1921, 99 years ago, next year will be the 100th anniversary, is that the small Mary in the mind of Frank Duff got bigger. All of a sudden got bigger. Frank Duff was a well-educated Catholic layman in a Catholic country with a normal devotion to Our Lady. Nothing special, nothing out of the ordinary. He had been in the St. Vincent de Paul Society for 8 years, started going to daily Mass. He even wrote a 31-page pamphlet entitled, Can We Be Saints?, in which he dedicated only 3/4 of a page to Our Lady. Interesting. A year later, he first learned about St. Louis Marie de Montfort's true devotion to Mary. He had never heard of de Montfort. He saw it in a used bookstore. He bought it, he read it, he didn't like it. He didn't like it at all. Put it down. He said it made too much of Mary. It was too exaggerated. One of his St. Vincent de Paul Society friends told him, read it again. And he did, again, and again, and again. He claimed that he read it 1,000 times. One day he had a sudden illumination, which he describes as a special grace from God. What struck him is the fact that the book taught the truth. The book told the truth about Mary. It wasn't that de Montfort's Mary was too big, or too exaggerated as he thought. It was Duff's Mary that was too small. And the problem was his lack of knowledge about Mary, his insufficient understanding of her role in salvation. As we pray that prayer, the mystery of your church, the body of Christ, the place of Mary, the mother of Jesus, in this mystery. And he discovered that she was the new Eve. This is something pretty old. It goes back to the very beginning. Almost one of the disciples of John was Polycarp. The disciple of Polycarp was Irenaeus. He talked about the new Eve. This goes back to almost the beginnings of the church, connected with apostolic times. He talks about, not in St. Paul, but we see it. He talks about new Adam. We hear the fathers of the church talking about the new Eve. And they saw Mary as being an important part in the whole role of salvation. And Frank Duff's Mary was getting bigger and bigger and bigger and closer to the reality of who she was. Began to share true devotion with anyone who would listen. During these 4 years before the founding of the Legion of Merit, this is 1917, we know what happened. Our Lady Fatima, the October 13th, when the miracle of the sun, and that was one of the things Father promoted here at Our Lady of Peace, the Fatima pilgrimages every month. And I think Frank Duff was beginning to sense that there was a new organization in the making. It wasn't going to be another St. Vincent de Paul or a branch of the St. Vincent de Paul, although they used a lot of the spirituality and the organization of the St. Vincent de Paul. He couldn't take from the St. Vincent de Paul members, he had been accused of stealing members from the St. Vincent de Paul Society, so he stayed away from the men, but he could take members from the women. And there was a group of women who shared the space with the St. Vincent de Paul members. They did cooking in the beginning. They taught catechism. They promoted devotional projects. one evening there was a man from the St. Vincent de Paul Society who talked about visiting the hospital for the poor, and it was really a hospital for the poor, and he talked about visiting these very, very, very sick people, and helping them to deal with their sickness. The women were so impressed by this talk, they wanted to do the same thing for the women, and they asked if they could, and so in this monthly meeting, Frank Duff shared with the people who came to the meeting what he had learned about true devotion and about Mary, and it was here that he shared with them what he had learned. After a few months of hearing about and discussing true devotion, he set up an entire evening to hearing about St. Louis de Montfort. All the young women at this moment were now in one accord to follow true devotion, and they agreed to meet the following week. One of the women said it was as if an electric contact was established, and then something happened. Well, you know what that something was? The Legion of Mary, and those women were the first members. A few months later, at one of the regular meetings, it was still the same group, these very simple women, working women, coming to the meeting after work. And this is described in the handbook. Frank Duff made a prediction. He made a prediction. He said, the Legion of Mary would spread throughout the whole world. Imagine this little tiny group in this poor neighborhood in Dublin, that this organization's group would spread to the whole world. He had that vision, that sense. This struck the women so funny, they burst into hearty laughter. They laughed for about 5 minutes. Later he recounted, that shows what they thought about my gift of prophecy. In the first 20 years, imagine, the Legion went to Scotland, London, India, United States, Canada, West Africa, to New York, San Francisco, to East Africa, Kenya. That's where Edel Quinn went and spent the last years of her life. When I went to Dublin, one of the times I was there, they gave me a scapular that belonged to Edel Quinn. And we used it for one of our legionaries who was very sick. She had a stroke. She was in the hospital. And so they put it on her, and she got better. But the scapular disappeared. I don't know where it went. It got wrapped up in bed clothing or whatever, and I never saw it again. So the Philippines, Joaquina Lucas, who was one of the first members of the Legion in the Philippines and became an envoy, went to South America and worked. It's interesting about the Philippines, it was right when World War II was about to happen, and in Joaquina Lucas's book, she talks about the people having meetings all through the occupation, and when they had bombs would start going off, they would go into hiding underneath wherever they went to the bomb shelters, and then they go back up into their meeting and finish the meeting. These are all the minutes. Very interesting. Before the war, there were 12 Presidia in Manila. After the war, while the occupation was going on, they ended up with 300 Presidia in 10 of the dioceses of the Philippines. Also South America, where Alfie Lam worked, China, Father Aidan McGraw, and he was in prison for many years also, Father McGraw. And the Legion established itself as a school of holiness among lay people. First of all, the purpose of the Legion. In Africa, there was one Michael Ecking, who was a convert, and his story is amazing. This one from Calabar at 1 a.m., travel to Oran, 18 miles by canoe, go from there to a Legion meeting 55 miles away. After the meeting, cycle on 12 miles to the nearest mission, fasting all the time so he could receive Holy Communion. This is a new convert in Africa. They weren't sure whether this would work outside of Ireland, outside of Europe, but they saw simple, uneducated people of different races together in the same group, martyrs for the faith. And China had many martyrs, men and women. The first legionaries were women. The first legionaries in the United States were men. When they opened the doors, when after the war in the Philippines, they discovered that about a third of the members of the Legion were men. Prisoners in jail have their presidia. In wartime, the Legion started. During independence movements, the Legion started. By the way, Frank Duff was very involved in Irish independence. This was the Legion was being formed and came into existence at the very time that Irish independence was going on. And he was involved in that, deeply involved in that. What was it that happened September 7th, 1921? Overnight, a huge field for lay apostolate opened up for laymen and women that embraced the whole world. Secondly, a school for holiness for people who lived in the world and worked in the world, all orchestrated by Our Lady. She was there before the women arrived at that first meeting. She was there before the first lay apostle knocked on the door. She was there before they knelt down in prayer. She was there before we arrived here this morning. Did you know that? You think of that? She was already here. She got up before you did. And it wasn't a 10-foot or 30-foot Mary, but a 90-foot Mary, a forthright expression of faith. Those are the words of Monsignor Sweeney. He used to say that all the time. That's what he wanted, a forthright expression of faith. He knew that's what the world needed at this time, a forthright expression of faith. She was the new Eve, the mother of God, without whose fiat there would not have been a Jesus. She was the new Eve at the foot of the cross, giving her assent to our redemption. Woman, behold your son, behold your mother, what we just heard in the gospel. Without Mary, there would not have been a church. St. Francis called her Virgin Maid Church. This was a big Mary next to a big Jesus. And her bigness comes from her son, and our bigness comes from her son through her. Behold your son, behold your mother. In the 80s, there were people, especially priests. Pray for the priests, please. We have some wonderful priests there. It's so wonderful to have priests who love Our Lady and love the Legion of Mary and have been involved in it. But there were many priests who were questioning devotion to Mary. I went to a retreat in Rome. They called it the Pope's Retreat. And feeling the burden of the attitude of priests towards the Legion and towards Mary. And I used to hear people say, I don't agree with the theology of the Legion. Cardinal Suenens, who was Pope Paul VI's representative in running the council of the Second Vatican Council, he spoke at this retreat, he asked Father Karl Rahner, one of the main theologians of the council, why has devotion to Mary been on the decline. And he said, because Jesus for many people today is a concept. And a concept doesn't need a mother. And but thank God for chapter 8 of Lumen Gentium. One speaker we had out here, theologian, he called this Pure de Montfort. Chapter 8, Lumen Gentium, one of the documents of the Second Vatican Council. Pure de Montfort. So if anybody ever says to you, it's pre-Vatican II, you say no, read chapter 8 of Lumen Gentium, one of the documents on the church. Thank God for St. John Paul II. He had put this to us on his coat of arms. And he said that long before he had it written on his coat of arms, he wrote it on his heart. He took it with him into the quarry when he was working, and I'm sure he didn't want to engage in the conversations of the men who were working with him. But he had this book and he read it, The True Devotion. He says it showed him his vocation, and thank God for him. He helped to make True Devotion mainstream in the church. The time when people were questioning, doubting. Father Koo. How many of you know Father Koo? Raise your hands if you know Father Koo. Father Matthew Koo. Okay. He's right here in San Jose. This is a special day for him. I don't know if you realize that. He was arrested on September the 8th, the feast of the birthday of Mary. Communists didn't know that. They didn't know that. They arrested him on that day. 29 years later, on the day that today's when the Legion of Mary was founded, the 7th of September, the anniversary of the founding of the Legion of Mary, he was let out of jail. 29 years later. Whole lifetime he spent in prison, and for his love for Our Lady, for the Legion of Mary. That was one of the charges they brought against him, that he belonged to the Legion of Mary. Imagine that. How subversive can you get? He belonged to the Legion of Mary, so one night I took him to the Legion of Mary meeting in San Francisco, and on our way back, he told me, he said, "Do you know Totus Tuus?" And I said, "Yeah." So he said, "We used to sing that in the work camp when we were out in the fields working, and it helped to keep our spirits up." We sang it together all the way back in the car. He knew it, I knew it in Latin. And around the same time that this was going on, and we heard about it, door to door. When I went on the post-retreat, I thought, this was missing. Master, apprentice. People were doing door to door, but they were scared to death about doing it. And they weren't sure what to do. No one taught them how to do it. No one showed them how to do it. Learn by doing. And we had one young man in one of our prosceniums. He drove a little sports car, and the first time he went out to knock on doors, he said, "I prayed, and I prayed, went up to the house that nobody would be home." So we need to match up masters with apprentices on door to door, so to help people to be able to know us to learn how to be holy. That doesn't come natural either. We have to learn that. And we have lots of masters out there to help us. Jesus Christ, Blessed Virgin Mary, St. Louis Marie de Montfort, Frank Duff, St. John Paul II, Alfie Lamb, Edel Quinn. I didn't talk much about them, but you can read about them. Go on before you leave here today, go on your Google and see what they say about them. Their stories are amazing. I focus on Frank Duff because he, like many of you, most of you, are busy lay people in the world. And he put God first. I'm going to end up with, this is a quote that I saw. Father McGraw, I met him, drove him to the meeting, he was in the car, and he ends up his little talk about China. And with this, he tells about this little girl. The officials, the authorities, well known in China as she is at the present moment. And a little girl said, "Mary's the mother of Jesus. She is in heaven." And she told the communists. They said, "In heaven? Stop telling lies. Tell us the truth. Where is this Mary? Don't worry. We shall find her in the end. She won't escape us." And he ends up by saying, "May no one escape her. May she lead all her," he says, "Chinese children and American children to the feet of her divine Son." In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
The Lord be with you. Let us pray.
Benedictus
gratis, ut mea ma prestum sacrificium acceptabile fida tutem pacem omnipotentem. Per omnia saecula saeculorum. Amen. Dominus vobiscum. Et cum spiritu tuo. Sursum corda. Oremus ad hominum. Gratias agamus. Domino Deo nostro, Divino et justum est, vere dignum et justum et sequum, et salutare, nos tibi semper ubique gratias agere, Domine Sancti Pater Omnipotens, Eterne Deus, et te, in commemoratione Beati Mariae Semper Virginis collaudare, benedicere et predicere, que er unigenitum tuum Sancti Spiritus Umbram Ratione concepit, et virginitatis gloria permanente, Domine eternum mundo, effudit, Iesum Christum, Dominum nostrum, per quem maestatem tuam, laudat angeli, adora dominationes, tremur potestas serafim, socia, cor exultatione concelebrant, cum quibus et nostros voces, ut admitium te precamur, supplici confessione dicentes. Nobis proque peccatoribus. Per omnia saecula saeculorum. Amen. Oremus, preceptus salataribus boniti, et divina institutione formati, audemus dicere, Pater noster, qui es in celi, sanctificetur nomen. Domini non sum dignus. Domini non sum dignus. Domini non sum dignus. Fiat vobis omnipotens et misericors Domini.
Amen.
Ecce agnus Dei triquitola peccata mundi, Domini non sum dignus et interest affectum meum, Satan nec verbus in abitur anima mea, Domini non sum dignus et interest affectum meum, Satan nec verbus in abitur anima mea, Domini non sum dignus et interest affectum meum,
Dixit Jesus Mater,
Okay, for the reverent reception of Holy Communion, you're going to go to the kneelers that are on your right. So in that section over there, it's the kneelers in the corner. Come down from the right, receive. At the kneelers, Father, we're going too far down there. Oh, okay, I got it. And then you're going to exit to the right. So come down to the right, exit to the right, to each one. And we've already got it figured out here. For those of you who are not able to make it down to the bottom, there will to get down here.
Dominus vobiscum. Oremus. Divinis repacti moraribus te Domine sufficite, exoramus, ut beate Maria Virginis intercessione, cuius immaculati cordis solemnia, memoriam, venerando agimus, a presentibus periculis liberati, aeterna vita gaudia consequamur, per Dominum nostrum Iesum Christum filium tuum, qui tecum vita regna ad unitate, Spiritus Sancti Deus, per omnia saecula saeculorum. Dominus vobiscum. Misa. Benedicat vos omnipotens Deus, Pater et Filius et Spiritus Sanctus. Amen. Dominus vobiscum. Ipsa vida era de vida et hominem, lux in tenebris, lux in tenebris, not eam non comprendere. Quid mi o mixus ad Deo, cui nominare tu one, hic venere testimonium per avere tu Domine, omnes credem pedilum. Non era ille lux sed testimonium per avere tu Domine. Era lux vera illuminat omne hominem, venientem in hoc mundo. In mundo era mundus pedipsum pactus est, und es eam non cognome. Propria venet sui enume non leciperum. Propria leciperum Deum, Dei potestatem, Filius Dei Filii, qui credent, in nomine eius, qui non ex sanguinibus, nequix voluntate carnis, nequix voluntate viris, ex Deo nati sunt. Et verbum caro factum habitavit in nobis, et vidimus gloriam eius, gloriam quasi unigeniti al Patre, venum gratiae et veritate.
Please be seated. Good morning again. So we're going to be very short at this time because I know you guys are hungry. I just want to make a few announcements before you guys, brothers and sisters, go out there and have coffee and breakfast for another 45 minutes. We should be back here around 10:45. The program will be given up to everybody. Today we have 3 programs, one in English, one in Spanish, and one in Korean. The yellow is the Spanish program, so I'm going to get the blue one is the English, and the green one is Korean. So if you happen to get Korean, you would have to learn how to read in Korean. All right? But everything attached to the program is the same. There is an envelope and there is a name tag inside each envelope. So I'm going to ask